Everybody's talking about September and September 23. What is September 23? Well, if you're in God's calendar, that's the 10th day of the 7th month of God. And that's something very awesome. It's an awesome day. It's the day once a year the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies. See, it moves in the Gregorian calendar, but it doesn't move in God's calendar. It's always the 10th day of the 7th month of God. And it's also a command of the Lord was given on that particular 10th day of the 7th month that He said, count now, count. Begin the count of the 7 years. Count 7 years, and the 7th year shall be a Sabbath year. Or today, most of the people there on the internet calls it the Smita, because in Hebrew it's a Smita year. As a matter of fact, I don't know if Sister Rita shared to you that the garden of our friend whom we stayed in this place is in shambles because they don't touch the ground, they don't till the soil, they don't do anything because the land rests on the 7th year. So God said, when you enter the land on the 10th month of the 10th day of the 7th month, count. So the counting of God begins on the 10th day of the 7th month of the Lord. That's why 2014 to 2015 is 1 year in the Lord in His calendar, beginning September, the 10th day of the 7th month, 2014. And it's going to end again on the 23rd of September, which is the 10th day of the 7th month. Next year is going to be different. So, there are things that are events that God has planned on His calendar. And I will share to you some of those things that had happened before in His calendar and what is still about to happen. And I will share to you about what's going to happen in September, because that's the calendar of God where He celebrates His fall feast. That's beginning on the 1st of the 7th month, which is Rosh Hashanah. Then 10 days of all, on the 10th day of the 7th month is Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, the holiest of all the days. And on the 15th of the 7th month of the Lord is the Feast of Tabernacles. And it's celebrated for 7 days, and on the 8th day is the highlight of all these things. So it's all jam-packed in this fall festival that we're going to look at, and we're going to prepare ourselves likewise here in this island for the Feast of the Lord, so that we will be in God's time agenda. So I'll just go quickly. God's day begins at night. Our day in this world begins at midnight. But God says on evening is the first day. In Genesis 1 says, and God called the light day, and darkness He called night, and that evening and the morning were the first day. So He cites evening first, then the morning. And He goes on, if you follow the verses, and evening and morning the second day. And then He says again, and evening and morning the third day. So He's giving us a sequence that things begin at night. So good morning tonight to you. This is God's day just began a while ago. God's week is 7 days. He said on the 7th day He sanctified it and blessed it. So after the 6 days of creation, God said the 7th day shall be separate, holy, and it shall be for He rested on that day from all His work that God created. So He gives us a cycle of beginning the day at night, then 7 days, and on the 7th day we rest. And I thank the Lord for the 7th day. I begin my rest now. Tomorrow I'll have breakfast, I'll enjoy, and not to think about any other things. God's year begins not New Year's like we celebrate January 1, but God's year begins at spring on the month of Nisan. The month of Nisan is the first month of the Lord. That happens sometimes between March and April. When God brought out His people from Egypt, His first command was, this shall be the first month unto you. So the first command of the Lord to His people, Israel, was to give them a calendar. So it's important to the Lord that we are in tune with His calendar. While all the rest of the world are frozen in winter in the northern hemisphere, God's calendar begins springtime when everything just blossoms. It's springtime now in Europe, in that northern hemisphere. It's just a beautiful place to visit. And the month of the Lord is from new moon to new moon. And the cycle of the moon is 29.25 days, so that's a 30-day month cycle. Isaiah 66 says, "It shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, said the Lord." So he gives a sequence of months, a sequence of weeks. Then, these are the names of the months of the Lord. These are found in the scriptures, except for a few. Nisan is there, Ziv, this is Sivan. Tammuz, Av, and Elul are not in the Bible. Etanim is in the Word. Bul, Cheslul, Tevet, Shvat, Adar, and Adar too. They also have what we call aligning to the solar, not only the lunar calendar, but also aligning every springtime shall be the first month of the Lord. So they add a leap year. For us, it's a leap day every 4 years. For them, they add another month every 4 or 5 years or so. They say that the calendar of God, every 19 years, they add 7 months. So the feast of the Lord is found in Leviticus chapter 23. Speaking to Moses, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the feast of the Lord." See, this is the feast of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. And God says, "These are my feast." This is not Israel's feast. This is not the Jewish feast. This is the Lord's feast. So this is not something that we're saying that we're becoming more Jewish, but it's really becoming more godly in our lives when we follow the calendar of God. And he proclaims this feast, and he goes on, "And these are the feasts of the Lord, holy convocation, you shall proclaim in their seasons," as we're proclaiming now. "In the 14th day of the first month," that is the Lord's Passover. "And the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread." And then and then the Lord, 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. And the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. So the feasts of the Lord are also Sabbaths, meaning rest day, meaning set apart, holy. "But you shall offer an offering made by fire to the Lord 7 days. In the 7th day in the holy convocation you shall do no work." So it's not only a feast day, but also a week of Sabbath on the feast. "And then you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath." So he doesn't mention the month, but he says, "I want you from the feast of unleavened bread, I want you to count." Although you can specify a date, but God says count. So this is what's known today. If you go to Israel, they count the Omer until the harvest. So God says, don't mark a calendar, but count your days. From tomorrow, 7 Sabbaths, meaning 7 weeks. And on the 50th day, and you shall number 50 days, and that shall be a feast unto the Lord, which we celebrate Pentecost. Alright, so we've got the feast of the Lord. And in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, which we're coming into now, in our season, it shall be a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets. That's why I long to hear the trumpet. And it's a holy convocation. And you shall not do any work. And you shall bring an offering made by fire unto the Lord. So, the first day of the 7th month is a feast of the Lord. Then also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. And watch what he says. "It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And you shall do no work in the same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before the Lord your God. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people." So this is the holiest of the day that the Lord has given his people. The Day of Atonement, which is coming up, which is the 23rd of September. And then speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles. So that's the 15th. For 7 days unto the Lord. And he goes on further instructions. Verse 37, these are the feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be a holy convocation. So here we have the dates that God has given us. Altogether, there are 7. Amazing. 7. So we've got Passover, which is the 14th of Nisan. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the 15th of Nisan. The Feast of Fruits, which is the 17th of Nisan. The Feast of Weeks, after you count 50 days from Passover, is the Feast of Weeks. Then you wait a long time until the fall, is the memorial of the blowing of trumpets, which is the first day of the 7th month of the Lord. And the Day of Atonement, which is the 10th day of the 7th month of the Lord. And the Feast of Tabernacles, the 15th. And you know when these feasts are, if you don't have a calendar then, when you were living during the times of the Bible, you just look up in the sky. When the moon is full, that's the 15th of the month. When the moon is just beginning to sliver, that's the first day of the month. At the end of that sliver, that's the last day of the month. Full moon is always the 15th, the middle of the month. Okay, so have you seen the moon lately? Because we have not been looking up. We always look at all the problems and all the cares of this world, which Satan has ruled over. And really, amazing how our sharing today went, how much the dullness of the senses and the spirituality of the people on the globe is even getting more and more intense. That more and more people now are getting harder and harder because their senses are getting duller and duller to be attuned to the word of the Lord. And they're doing that in so many ways. And there's so many conspiracy theories out there that maybe the first thing we should do is watch what you eat. Watch the fruits, the fruits of the land, where the seeds come from. Watch whatever comes into your body, into your bloodstreams. Whatever is injected in your bodies. And the whole scope, I think I will not be able to finish what I'm about to share if I just go on. But here's the calendar of the Lord. So let me share. Nisan, this is the first month. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So in Nisan, on the 14th, Passover, 15th, unleavened bread, 17th is first fruits. Then you count 50 days, which is the 6th or the 7th of Sivan, is Pentecost. And then you wait how many months until the feast of Rosh Hashanah. Then on the 10th day, the Feast of Atonement. And on the 15th, the Feast of Tabernacles. And then you wait again until Nisan comes, then Passover. So this is a calendar which I got from Gavin Finley. If you go to his website, amazing how he does the math of this. But I'm more interested with the fall appointed day feast because that's what's coming up. Okay, so the appointed day of the feast is the memorial of blowing of trumpets. It's the Feast of Trumpets as we know it. But it's known as the memorial of the blowing of the Teruah, or the Yom Teruah, the day of Teruah. Teruah is a way of blowing the shofar. And then it's the Day of Atonement and the Feast of Tabernacles. So these are the 3 feasts that are arriving on September. Beginning on the 13th of September, which is the first day of the 7th month. Then the 23rd, and then the 28th of September, which happens to be a supermoon, and a lunar eclipse, and a red blood moon. And it happens on the Feast of the Lord. And the last of the tetrad. And the next tetrad is hundreds of years from now. So what is the memorial of the blowing of trumpets? Then the Lord spoke to Moses, speak to the children of Israel, saying, the 7th month, the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath rest, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and holy convocation. The word that is used in convocation is the word mikra. This is from the Strong's Concordance. Something called out, public meeting, the act, the person, of the place. It's also known as a rehearsal. An assembly, calling, convocation, or a reading. So a gathering of God's people coming together, celebrating this feast, and also know